The Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum was launched to inform, inspire, motivate diverse talent to join the energy workforce by intentional recognition of current female energy leaders who contribute to growing Florida's economy and the purposeful sharing of their professional journeys. We are creating opportunity. Join me each week as we meet new leaders in energy and listen to their important roles in an industry that is vital to the country's future. Good morning. Welcome to this week's show. And I'm with Cathy Chambers. Cathy leads and advances FP&L's statewide work and economic development. And Cathy, so many people give you credit for really placing FP&L on the map as one of the top utilities in economic development. And having heard all of the wonderful things about you, I know you'll agree with me that it takes a village to accomplish that sort of recognition, but nevertheless, you are nationally recognized for what you have personally done in your career and with FP&L. And so welcome. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity to be with you and to really do, and for everything you're doing to promote careers in energy, especially for women. It's really important.
Thank you. So let's start with your work. Why is it so important for a utility company like Florida Power and Light to be that involved in the state's economic development?
So it's really important that Florida grow. And as Florida grows, FPL grows. And so it's great for our customers. It's great for the state. And so our team is 15 people strong. So you're right. It is very much a team effort. I'm actually relatively new on the scene to our team. So I've only been with FPL for about 3 years. And so we've got a team of very experienced folks, a lot of experience or expertise that was developed in-house, as well as a lot of recruited talent in economic development that has joined our team. And so between that, this is a relationship business at its core. And so the relationships that come with all those years of expertise on the team are really the critical piece to finding success in having that outreach, whether it's directly to companies or a lot of the site consultants that represent those companies. And so our whole team does a great job of building those relationships and bringing those folks into the conversation so that we can talk to them about everything Florida has to offer.
So when we talk about you having a statewide presence in the world of economic development, it's we probably should clarify, while Florida Power and Light has customers throughout the state, a large part of the state, you're not in all of Florida. So, for those folks that may not be as familiar with your work or why it's important to have a presence in the entire state, how is it that your work and leadership in parts of the state where you don't have customers, how does that exactly help your existing customers? If you're not providing service in those parts of Florida, what's the direct benefit to the customers that you serve?
So just like our companies don't see county lines, they certainly don't see our service territory lines. So we do have the opportunity to serve over half the state. But when we market Florida, we just market the whole state. And we do that for a lot of reasons. But it just makes sense to sell Florida first, because as I mentioned, those companies don't see any of those lines or understand where those boundaries are. And so we have a target sector approach where we're trying to recruit specific industries, and we work really collaboratively with all the local and regional economic development partners to make sure that our clients get the location they need. So if Florida succeeds, we all succeed, and we want to make sure that we help them find that right location. And that's the beauty of Florida and the diversity of all the locations. It can be urban, it can be rural, it can be suburban. We have every single option available to a company, and we all work together and refer projects around each other to the state to make sure we keep them in Florida. Florida first. We want to make sure that they're here before they go somewhere else.
I love that. Florida first. Yeah. That should be our theme the entire show, don't you think?
Perfect.
So you mentioned, working collaboratively with your sister colleagues around the utility companies, but there are lots of organizations you have to collaborate with. So can you discuss, who are those entities you have to collaborate with, and what goes into those sorts of partnerships?
Sure. Pretty much if the word Florida is in the name, we probably collaborate with them. But that's Enterprise Florida, Space Florida, Career Source Florida, the small business teams, Grow Florida, any organization that is playing a role in helping companies succeed here, we're probably partnering with them. And we all really work hard to complement what one another are doing and to not replicate or duplicate any services. And so, there's plenty of work to do. So that's not a challenge. And then certainly we work with every regional and local EDO. And as we talked about statewide, we invest in resources like our Powering Florida Resource Center that provides the kind of data that powers a lot of the work we do to the entire state. So, we offer marketing support, research, business development services, and we invest in those communities and in our practitioners. So that's how we go about it.
And our viewers and listeners can access that information through the Powering Florida website. They can also reach you through that same website, right?
Yes, they can.
So part of the data that you have on the website and information you have access to, do you find yourself connecting potential businesses to, incentive dollars, economic development grants? How much are you involved with that, funding matchmaking?
So, site selection is really complex and every deal is looking for different things. And certainly we will, help promote any programs as we have opportunities to have those discussions. It really depends a little bit on whether we generated the lead or if it's coming to us from a state partner or a local partner, whether they're driving those conversations. But we absolutely do everything we can to talk about Florida's great tax climate as it is. That is an incentive, right? Our low taxes here really allow us to attract a lot of companies and get a lot of interest that we don't have to offer a lot of tax incentives because we have a low tax environment to begin with. But we do promote those programs as well as our own programs and allow our communities and make sure we bring them in on the conversation so that we're putting our best foot forward.
So we haven't mentioned yet, Florida does not have a state income tax. Mm-hmm. That's a big attraction right there, right? And listen, our climate is wonderful, right? There's so much that Florida has to offer, and it's great that you have a Florida first mentality because you're right there at the table promoting our state. I loved what you said, that it really doesn't matter what part of the state this new company comes in. You'll connect the company to the appropriate electric or natural gas provider in the state. And is that a formal partnership, Cathy, or you just understand the geography and the intent of the company that's being recruited into the state and connect them with your counterparts?
Yeah, just really listening to what their needs are, what they're looking for. And again, if we can't deliver what they need, then we certainly will connect them. When we look at clusters in the state, aviation's a great one. You look at that activity happens everywhere. They don't think anything about connecting a company that's in the Space Coast with one that might be in Tampa, for example. And so it works really well when we think about it statewide because it's not isolated to any one area. So those companies work in partnership and they supply goods and services to one another. And so that's why it helps to sell it all together, whether we're at an aviation trade show and we've got all of our partners inside a booth space that we might be helping to provide. That's exactly how we all do this better, is if we're making sure we're selling the entire package and not just trying to promote any one area and sort of the limitations to that industry sector that come with that view.
That's great. You mentioned site selection. Let's drill down on each component of economic development and where you partner with companies. So site selection. Mm-hmm. Are you finding that there are more challenges than opportunities right now in identifying sites that can be used for economic development for other companies coming into the state, and secondarily, the site selection for your own projects?
So the biggest challenge that I think we're seeing right now is everybody's behind schedule when they even start the conversation, and there are supply chain issues that are causing incredible pressures on our clients to deliver new buildings and new projects. And so starting with that framework, what gets difficult is trying to find sites, and as we develop new sites, that are really ready to move forward, because they're under pressure. They want to be up and running in what are probably unreasonable timeframes in many cases, but 12 months, 18 months. And a lot of, a few years ago, we would have seen people planning with 2 and 3 years to bring these projects together. You have more time to develop infrastructure. So the sites that are really truly infrastructure ready are the ones that are going to be successful here. But talent is the other big piece of that. If they don't believe they can find the talent they need, that's going to be the biggest driver of success. And so we really have to analyze that with the companies and with the communities. And talent is very much a local and regional differentiator point for a lot of communities. So we really help try to make sure we tell that story the best way possible, make introductions to companies that are hiring in the area so they hear firsthand what that experience is like. But there's so many issues that companies are looking at, affordable housing and all the other elements that go into making a good site. So those decisions are frankly a lot more complex than they were a couple decades ago, as long as I've been in this business.
So on the talent side, on the workforce needs side, that's where your partnership with your regional career source organizations comes in, right?
Definitely.
And with regard to affordable housing, what do you do there? Is there anything in your toolbox related to connecting developers to companies that are being recruited to come into the state?
Our communities are really leading the way on the affordable housing front. As we all know, prices this last year really escalated hopefully at an unsustainable point, and a point that won't remain. But really working with developers to bring new affordable income product on, and a lot of those things, that just really making sure we do a thorough dive into what is available to make sure that that doesn't become something that prevents a project from being successful.
You mentioned, I'd always learned, I think you and I were talking about this in the pre-show. I've always heard, as one of the stakeholders in the process at various times, that, the components that a company considering moving its headquarters to another state, what are those components that company is looking for? They're looking at energy rates. What are those electric rates or natural gas rates? They're looking at affordable housing. They're looking at the quality of education, right?
Yeah.
And of course, their ability to find skilled workforce talent. On the rate side, do you have tools in your toolbox that you can offer that company that is looking in someplace in your service area? Do you have, rates, flexibility to offer to them?
We do. We pride ourselves on offering rates that are, or power that is clean, affordable, and reliable. But within that, we do have some economic development tariffs that allow us, for competitive projects, to do some negotiating and offer some discounts to help get these projects, to attract them to Florida and to help get them up and running in those sort of formative and critical first few years. And so we do bring those to the table. Just as important are a lot of the sustainability programs that we have to offer. Our Solar Together, our community subscription solar program, has been really helpful at working with companies that value solar energy, green power. And so that's been kind of a game changer for us in moving that conversation forward and being a point of differentiation for us. We also have experts in real estate and environment and water that we bring to the table if there's anything we can do to help reduce costs around water, for example, or things like that. So we really try to use all that in-house expertise of being part of, a bigger Fortune 200 exterior energy company to make these projects really come to life.
So let me understand what you said on companies that are looking for green power and very interested in maybe the Solar Together program. So maybe it's not just what are the rates or what are the prices that will be available to that commercial or industrial user, but also the kind of energy that's available, right? That's a
Absolutely.
shift.
It
That's
is
a shift.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we're seeing it in all different sectors, from data centers to food production. The companies are coming forward and asking what can be done, what can be done in the short term, what can be done in the long term. And, this summer we announced a really aggressive Real Zero program for our entire company. And this initiative is meant to decarbonize our own company and lead the way in helping other utilities and companies decarbonize their path forward. And so by changing our entire fleet over to green energy, we can be a real partner in those companies that value ESG over the next couple of decades. That's exactly where we're headed. And we think that's going to be really attractive as a selling point for our company.
And you'll be able to point to yourselves as an example
Exactly.
in those new companies that are moving into your service territory. So, I get the question often from landowners, how much land is required for a solar company to develop? So, the farmers, the agriculturalists who are thinking about leasing out or selling their land. So, in a site selection process, just to answer that question for folks, how much land is required for a solar project?
I believe it's around 700 acres would probably be a typical 74.5 megawatt project for us. So it really just depends on how much of that land is actually usable. So that could vary, down or up based on the amount of wetlands and things like that that are on the site. But I believe that's our sort of rule of thumb about how much land would be needed to initiate one of our 74.5 megawatt solar facilities.
So there you go. That's for my former colleague there, Larry Williams, who owns a whole bunch of property in the Panhandle. We've just answered that question for him, Cathy. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Cathy, switching gears on the education side. So there's a partnership opportunity, I would imagine, with the community colleges and the VOTEC schools with regard to the workforce challenges, but also in terms of coming into the FP&L family to work. Is that an area of your focus?
So we don't, in our team, we're more externally focused. So we're not working on sort of the company issues as much day to day, but it very much staying in touch with our colleges and universities as an entire economic development community to make sure that they are connected to the employers and understand what that sort of future workforce is going to need and look like. And they're doing an incredible job. Our universities and colleges don't get enough credit for the great work they're doing and how well rated they are. And so there are things that we have specifically done. During the pandemic, we gave away over $1 million worth of laptops to help drive enrollment in the rapid credential programs that all of our colleges were offering at that time to help get people back to work. And so those programs exist year round and are really important. But that was something that we really wanted to do to help when all the learning shifted to virtual. And so going forward, we're actually getting really close to launching a statewide talent marketing campaign. So we're working with all of our regions to put information out on a website that helps promote what it's like to actually live here. There's a lot of misperceptions about what it's like to live in Florida. And so we want to try to help correct those. We've always done that on the business attraction side, but we want to do it on the individual side too, and really helping individuals understand all the variety and diversity of options there are to live here. It's not just any one place that they might know from vacation history or just what they read about on the news. So that's a really exciting opportunity for us, is to kind of help move that forward. And we're doing that in partnership with CareerSource and the Florida Chamber and lots of different folks who are all invested in that space. We're all working together to try to help better position Florida, because we know 800 people are moving here every day,
Right.
and we can say, hey, we can relax and be happy about that, but we all see the unemployment rate and how low it is, and we know our employers are still looking for specific talent. So hopefully this initiative will give those HR recruiters and our businesses a leg up in trying to help sell the community with the job opportunity.
Well, what I particularly like about that is, as well, having two teenagers, is the idea that educating our own about their state, hopefully in an effort that they stay here, that
Yeah.
they remain interested in their state and become part of the workforce talent for years to come. We had a question from one of our viewers. Jennifer asked, does FP&L partner with any other developers for projects that fall under the 74 megawatt mark?
I'll have to get back to Jennifer offline, but I know that just a lot of our universal scale solar plants are done in those 74.5 megawatt tranches. So I think at this point, we've got a nice horizon of projects that are lined up to help get us to our goals. And so I know that's just sort of the number that we're working with.
And I do think you have partnerships in that
We do.
regard. Yeah. Okay. And so let's talk a little bit about how your work has been impacted by the pandemic, and frankly Ukraine as well with regard to the supply issues. So let's take it one at a time. Do you find that COVID required you to do different things in the community as far as engagement?
So it did. 2020 wasn't fun for anybody in this business or any company trying to cite a location project when you couldn't travel, right? But we reopened as early as anyone, and I think really benefited from everybody shifted to virtual. And so we did do a few things to really try to help facilitate the sales process in light of there not being travel. We offered all of our communities the chance to develop a virtual site tour to promote an available site that they might have and help move it along in its marketing. And so we still use those today. We actually are hosting a virtual site visit this week. So that's still a thing, just because of efficiency and being able to do that. Of course, we'd always rather host those in person and what have you, but we helped some of our communities improve their marketing plans and work on those marketing presentations that are so critical since everybody had a little bit of extra time to do those sort of proactive things. We had our first 35 Mules cohort, and that's the innovation hub that's housed at our headquarters in Juno Beach. We had 7 startups that were meant to live in our space and make interactions with our company. We had to start that virtually, and that was really tough. So, we did everything we could to provide as much value in that virtual platform that we were all stuck in for a while, but we're happy to be on the other side of that. But certainly pivoted every way we could to make sure we were engaged in the communities and kept as many of those projects going, which I do think has led to a lot of that time pressure that we see still in that companies are all behind schedule on moving these projects forward.
Yeah, but in many ways also it's made you, I think, more accessible, don't you think? I mean, the remote
Absolutely.
world probably isn't going to go away for a while, and it has provided some efficiency, I think, in terms of making sure people remain accessible.
Absolutely. It's trying to find that balance, right?
Yeah,
Back to the relationship business. You want to be in person, but yes, there are plenty of times where we can get a lot more done. And especially when we have people geographically dispersed, to get people on a 1 hour virtual call and accomplish things that would have taken weeks and months to do absent
sure,
that. So
sure.
I'm thrilled we have both options now. And I think we just have to use them in the right way to make sure we're still seeing the success we need to see. We see the changing trends that have come from that. The workforce is demanding different things out of their employers, and I think that's going to continue as long as we're in a tight labor market.
Yeah. So we've got another question from our audience. The question is, are there some parts of Florida that are growing faster than others? And where is your interest now in the state?
I mean, we promote the entire state, and yes, there are most areas of Florida are growing, and some are growing faster. I can't tell you those off the top of my head, but I think by and large, almost every part of Florida is seeing growth with those 800 new residents every day, and are all eager to make sure they're finding that right growth and striking that balance and making sure it's affordable and all the things that come with that. So we're bullish on the entire state, and we're bullish on certainly supporting our territory every way we can and helping them grow. But, we work with our communities very closely, and we make sure we're aligned with what they're looking for and what they're trying to recruit. So we understand the kinds of businesses they're looking to attract, and we try to do our best to help communicate that along anytime we have an opportunity to introduce a new company.
Thank you, Cathy. Well, this is part of the program, Cathy, where we get a little bit personal. You okay with that?
I'm good with that.
They're harmless questions like, where did you go to college, Cathy?
So I grew up in St. Louis. I'll start there, but I went to Miami University, the one in Ohio, as I have to clarify with everyone down here.
Yes.
I majored in public administration. So at the time, I was determined to go to law school. I did an internship one summer in DC and loved the city, but thought politics maybe not so much for me. So enjoyed that experience very much, but that probably opened my eyes a little bit to what I didn't want to do. So I had a guest lecture professor at Miami my junior year who ran the economic development office for the neighboring city of Hamilton, Ohio. And so he asked if I wanted to join him that summer in an internship, and had a place to stay and friends to live with, and thought, heck, why not? So that really is the story of how I fell into this career. And I think you'll find if you ask enough economic developers, they all fell into it one way or the other. I just was lucky to find it so early. So I did end up getting my MBA from Xavier University when I was working in Cincinnati, but really am glad, I think, that I stayed on this path and didn't pursue the legal path, but that was my plan back at the time.
And you're so right. Everyone you talk to, not just in the economic development world, but more and more as I do this, that's the phrase. The women I meet through this process have said, I fell into this. Is not what I expected to be doing, but I'm glad I'm doing it. And you certainly are passionate about economic development, and it shows in your professionalism, right? You enjoy what you're doing. You're great at it, and you get to see the fruit of your efforts, which must be so rewarding.
Thank you. It really is. And that's the legacy of knowing a lot of folks. You don't ever have to meet them, but had an opportunity to get jobs and participate in the economy in a way they maybe didn't, or just improve their economic situation. It really is the reason we all do this. And, the relationships we developed, I've had the opportunity to chair our statewide association, and I know most of the professionals in the state personally. We travel together. I've traveled with some of these people more than I travel with my own family. So, Crystal Stiles and I, my predecessor in this role, had traveled the world over, and we're great friends. And so these aren't just, passing colleagues. We really are invested in each other's success. We congratulate one another when anyone has a win, and we really mentor one another and are there to share best practices and invest into each other. And so that was a really easy transition coming into this role, because that's actually what I'm expected to do. So that's a really fun move. And I had been in Northeast Florida for most of my 20 years in Florida, but it's been really fun to explore the rest of the state and spend so much time kind of getting out and understanding the true diversity of the entire state.
And so let's explain your presence in Northeast Florida. You were with Jax USA.
Yes.
And what is that? And what was your role there?
So I'm a huge deal girl, and I also love regional economic development. So with that history, I did work at Jax USA Partnership for 17 years. That's the economic development arm of the Jacksonville Chamber. So it promotes a 7-county area in Northeast Florida. And at the end, I was kind of running our strategic planning initiatives and really recruiting a lot for the financial services and fintech industries. So spent a lot of time in New York with a lot of companies, the kinds of companies that have been moving down and selling Florida. And then really helping build that industry, which has had a lot of success. So, but it was a great role in really understanding how regional and local economic development works. You're connecting the public and the private sector together. You're moving, strategic initiatives forward. And I think sort of that background coming into this role really has helped me with a lot of the relationships around the state, because folks know I've been in their shoes and know what it takes to sort of lead and run those organizations, because it's a lot. There's a lot of stakeholders.
So as you know, we have sometimes students who listen in on this program, and I want to focus on a couple of things you said. Obviously, your significant work in this area speaks for itself, but you've mentioned several times relationships. And I think we can't understate the importance of earning that trust with the person on the other side of that deal, right? You're the deal girl, but it takes trust to bring that opportunity in for a landing, and it takes credibility, right? And the years of a relationship that earns you that trust. So you'd agree with me. I mean, you didn't just get the attention of companies like FP&L or your counterparts in the other economic development organizations because you're so likable. They must have worked, with you across the table and watched that relationship really come in for a landing with either an acquisition or a recruit of a company.
Yeah, and these relationships take years of attending conferences with site selectors, for example, or years of developing relationships by attending specific industry trade shows or conferences. And that authenticity piece, I can't emphasize enough. We may not always be the perfect location for somebody, and being transparent and forthright about what we do offer from a value proposition, but really listening to what their needs are and making sure we do everything we can to address or mitigate any concerns they have. That's where you earn that repeat business and have folks kind of coming back to you time and time again. So every project is different, and you really have to be. That's why I've been in this business for so long. I've never been bored. I've never had two identical days, and so for me, that's the fun of it. And it really does help that we see the same people year over year. There's about 100 site consultants that really drive about half of the projects that are looking. And so, again, we've traveled together, we've hosted them for events, and we really try to get to know them personally. It makes it a lot easier to do business.
Absolutely. So another question from the audience: What brought you to Florida Power and Light?
The people. I remember the first time I heard Eric Szilagyi speak over a decade ago at a conference. I just never had any reason to interact with FPL since I wasn't in their service territory. And, he's just the kind of guy you want to run through a wall for. Like, he's just so passionate. And I just will never forget meeting him for the first time and hearing him speak. And then Pam Rausch was actually the chair for Leadership Florida when I went through that program a few years back, and had a chance to really see the impact she has, and just how much she cares about this state and the communities in it. And as I mentioned, Crystal, my predecessor in this role, and I had been traveling together and selling Florida together and had become close friends. And so she's the one that really convinced me to come over to this side. And it's only been 3 years, and I've got a ton more to learn, but it's been a great ride. So the reputation of the company is just incredible, and I feel very, very lucky to be here.
So, Cathy, no one's going to believe I didn't put you up to this, but all three of the people that you mentioned, Eric Szilagyi, Pam Rausch, and Crystal Stiles, are on this year's program in November, the Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum annual forum. Isn't that funny? No one's going to believe it, but I promise I didn't put Cathy up to it. So we'll be in Tampa November 9th through the 11th, and Eric is one of our keynote speakers. Pam is facilitating a panel, and Crystal will be on a panel with her new role as your mobility director, right?
Yes.
We're going to talk about electric vehicles. So please do come to the forum. This is going to be a great program this year, and we'll be in Tampa, real easy to get to. And Florida Power and Light is not just the sponsor for this program, but they're one of the title sponsors for the forum. So the theme for the forum, Cathy, is re-energized. So, when I think of re-energized, I think about how we've had to re-energize our colleagues in our industry and in our work post-COVID, all things associated with the pandemic, and just from a morale perspective. But when I think about the industry, I also think about how we have furthered renewable energy. We're looking at a carbon-free America and looking at battery storage and the like. Give me an example of what you think re-energized means in an economic development sense.
I think for economic development, it's a little bit of what I was talking about in, every deal and project is different, right? So we're always re-energized by each project because it causes us to view things differently and find different expertise to solve the problem. So I think that's the part of, it never being dull and always having to look for innovative and creative solutions. And so that ties really well. And you'll hear more about it, I'm sure, now that I know who's on your program for the conference. But in terms of our Real Zero initiative, what I think about as a company, that has really re-energized all of us around a mission to do something that no one else has done before in decarbonizing ourselves. And so I think you'll get a lot more detail at the conference, but that's the kind of thing that, from an economic development perspective, for our ability to tell that story and put that out there, I mean, it's huge. And it's going to be a game changer. And I'm just so excited to have those conversations with companies that are looking at Florida.
We are as well. We can't wait for that. So again, we have women who participate in the program that are already in the industry, or maybe they're in a different industry and are thinking about switching, and of course, students. So my last question for you, see, this was harmless, right?
Totally.
Yeah, she says, I can see that nervous giggle there, Cathy. No, you were great. You're absolutely wonderful. So what advice would you give that second-year college student or the woman in a different industry thinking about switching over to energy? What advice would you give her in terms of approaching the industry and starting a career as a woman in energy?
I'm the new kid on the block, so I can say this pretty easily. And coming into this company with, several decades of experience, I learn something every day. My head hurts a lot of days in terms of just the amount of information I'm taking in. And so there's so much disruption and innovation happening in energy that I just don't think folks are aware if they haven't paid attention before. And so this is a great time to get in on a sector that people might think of as, one that's not innovative or not those things. And I can tell you my experience with this company is anything but boring. And so I see so much potential and opportunity. And you also need to understand that there's so much opportunity for movement once you are inside of one of these companies. And I see, Crystal's a great example. We purposefully put individuals into different roles and move them around and challenge them. And so you're not ever going to be bored if you're working inside of a company like ours. And so it's something that I still truthfully have so much more to learn. And I've only been on this side of it for 3 years, but it just has endless opportunities to learn and to grow. And I don't know that you can say that about every industry. So I think that's what's most exciting for anybody in that situation.
What a great place to end. Thank you for your leadership, Cathy. You
Thanks, Lila.
really, really said it well. Lots of opportunity for growth. Never boring, never boring. So thank you. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate
And
it.
viewers, thank you for being with us as well. And hopefully we will see you in a couple of weeks with our next program. And also at the forum. You can register at flwomenenergy.com. Come listen to more information on the Real Zero program. Thank you, Cathy. We'll see you next time.
Great. Look forward to it.